guys, let's get started. Thank you to those people that confirmed the audio. I hope everyone else is okay, and the audio is coming through clearly. So let's get started. So today's webinar is on building energy analysis and HVAC design. Of course, that's why you guys are here, to learn about our solution, our workflow. Now, what I'm going to stress before we start, of course, if you guys have any questions, ask those questions as soon as you have them. If I'm able to answer them quickly, I'll answer them at the time. But if not, we're going to come back to them at the end. So don't stress if I don't answer your question immediately. I will see it and I will answer accordingly after the presentation, depending on how long I think it will take to explain. Anyway, let's get started. If you guys have attended any of these webinars before, you'll know that I always start with explaining this particular diagram. Now, this particular diagram basically has the function of demonstrating the workflow here. So how we would start a typical HVAC or energy solution project, or any project for that matter, we would start off with a physical 3D model. Now, this physical 3D model can be developed in our own software called IFC Builder. And if you were here last week, you'll remember that we went through that program, and we had a look at some other programs as well that complement our architectural modeler. But of course, different programs such as ArchiCAD, Revit, Allplan, etc., all our architectural modelers, we of course have the capabilities to bring those models into our workflow. And so what that basically means is that we bring it into our IFC format, and when, of course, that becomes a part of the IFC format, it becomes a part of the BIM Service Center, basically. So now, of course, once it becomes a part of that BIM Service Center, then we can start deploying our specialized applications. So things such as our HVAC solutions. Last week we went through our architectural modelers, so things like our lighting, structural, HVAC, energy, and we're going to have a look at a few programs today. We're going to try and fit in the majority of the workflow we have here. Now, if this doesn't make sense right now, it's okay. I'm going to go through an actual example and sort of demonstrate this with an actual project. Another thing I want to stress is these specialized applications are able to generate these technical documents. So things such as specifications, drawings, schematic diagrams, and these are all able to be shared within the BIM Service Center platform, so that other project stakeholders are able to obtain those documents just literally by being, one, a part of the project, and two, having an internet connection, basically. So this is what I'm going to leave this here, but I'm going to come back to it once we have once we go into an example project. Now, what I wanted to stress before was how we actually create a BIM Service Center account. So because I know we had a few questions last week on how to create an account, how to download the programs, etc., etc. We need to head to bimserver.center. Before you do anything, we head to the bimserver.center and we're asked to create an account. So we can come over here to the login button and this button here, register here. Once you're clicking that, name, email, password, you'll receive a confirmation email. And once you receive that confirmation email, you're able to log in. And that's what I'm going to do now. Now, upon logging in, we're greeted with the BIM Service Center dashboard. So if you've created your own account and you've just entered, you won't see much because you're not a part of any sort of projects and stuff. It's sort of fresh for you. But of course, you can see here in my account, you can see the projects that I'm a part of, my contacts, pending collaboration requests. So this means the requests that I have sent to other professionals to be a part of my project, and also invitations that I've received to be a part of my my cohort's projects. Of course, our downloaded applications that we've downloaded before. some modules and licenses, and of course a social media feed for all of your latest, for all our latest news and updates. Now, before I head to the store, I'm going to show a project to try and demonstrate this workflow just a little bit better. So these are all the projects that I'm a part of. Let's have a look at one in particular, one I like to show. Let's see. Yeah, this is the Crown Hall project. This is actually modeled off an existing building. You can see here, this is my project dashboard. So I've got the name, I've got my my particular position within the project. So I'm an editor, so I basically have some extra freedoms when it comes to defining certain elements, attributing certain models, downloading applications, adding project team members, etc., etc. But of course, the project creator is able to define those specifications. Now you can see this is the structural model. If you guys are familiar, we have our beams, etc., our piles. Now, if I come over here, you can see here, I'm able to toggle on and off the particular models. So what I'm doing here is I'm toggling off these specialized applications, right? All against the physical 3D model. And you can see the architectural model is the physical 3D model. If I turn this on and I turn my structural model, you can see here, this is just the physical 3D model that you would develop in IFC Builder, Revit, ArchiCAD, etc. All the programs that I mentioned previously. Of course, we can make the architectural model transparent, and we can start looking at the different models that have been associated. So all our different specialized applications here, so such as our lighting, our structural model, you can see we can view our lighting model, we can view our structural model as we did prior, and this sort of has the sort of benefit of having one particular project and all our models together. Now, why is this workflow efficient, you ask? Now, one of the main reasons for its efficiency is because we can reduce overall project management time, etc., because we have everything in one particular place. So, you know, prior to this sort of workflow, we had different files that couldn't be obtained because they were caught up in the bureaucracy, the process, etc., etc. And this is another thing that I'm going to touch on now is our technical documents here. So right now I'm in the project dashboard. I can come over to files, and you can see here all the files that are associated with the project. I'm able to download literally at a click of a button. I can go into Office Furniture, and you can see all the files that have been made available to me by the illustrator or the creator. You can see here, this is my colleague that's created the Office Furniture file with 5 associated files, and it even tells me the application in which that model has been defined in. You can see here all our different DWG files. Of course, the workflow supports multiple different formats as well. So yeah, things such as you can see the structural model, our lux, our lighting model, all our different files can be downloaded literally at a click of a button on the bimserver.center. Now, what else did I wanted to mention? If I come back to the store now. So of course you can see all the different projects. I hope I've demonstrated how we sort of work, because now when I go into our HVAC and energy solution, it'll make a bit more sense of how we sort of progress through the workflow. Just a quick look at the different, some projects that I'm a part of. Of course, this is our metallic hotel that's been defined in our structural software, of course. This is another project that I created for a European initiative to reduce the energy consumption of buildings. And that's what we're going to touch on a bit later, how this sort of workflow can ultimately increase design time, because we spend less time doing things that are abolished by this workflow, basically. And by increasing design time, of course, if we increase design time, our all our different extra costs, our waste, our construction management times, they all decrease. So, I mean, numerous studies have sort of highlighted the fact that this sort of workflow does benefit in terms of basically across the board in terms of project management. Okay, so that's a little bit about this. Let's get into it. So our HVAC and energy solution. Now, what I want to stress is there are some particular methodologies in which we would have to adopt to sort of configure our HVAC and energy model. Now, initially, what we would do is start off with our CYPEHVAC loads program. Now, this is the program here. I've just loaded a example project here. What I didn't touch on was the store. Let's go into the store and just show you guys how to download. This is the store here, and you can see here straight away CYPEHVAC loads available for download here. So I just come over here, click it, click the download button. You'll receive a download, extract that download, and then install it there. Because I know there were a few people that had some trouble downloading. Now, of course, this is compatible with Windows only, so Windows 7, 8, and 10, and available in these languages. But I'm assuming if you guys are in this webinar, you'd just be dealing with English. But let's keep on going. Of course, we can refine by category, so our HVAC installations, and you can see here the vast sort of applications we're able to model, and you might actually recognize some popular HVAC companies here. So here at CYPE and BIM Service Center, we've partnered through our Open BIM manufacturer systems to bring in these large manufacturers such as Toshiba, Daikin, Midea, Giacomini, etc., to basically, we're going to have a look at this in a moment, but to basically bring in their particular models, their particular catalogs, the way they like to do things in their workflow, and bring it into the Open BIM workflow. And so this has multiple different benefits, and we're going to go through those in just a bit. So what I just wanted to stress here was, of course, we're starting off with CYPEHVAC loads. And CYPEHVAC loads, of course, is for basically just the calculation of peak heating and cooling loads. So what we need to do, of course, is we need to calculate our peak heating and cooling loads, and then we're able to select and intelligently design our air conditioning systems, our ventilation, etc., and also our energy, which we're going to go through at the end as well. So that's a little bit about how to download these programs. You can see here all the different manufacturer settings. So we've got HVAC, ducting, etc. So let's go into CYPEHVAC loads. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the main purpose of this program is to generate our peak heating and cooling loads. So what happens here is we'd initially start off with importing our architectural model, of course. So we're expected to have an architectural model before. Now, of course, you can design within CYPEHVAC loads without a architectural model, but we don't recommend it. So you would initially start off with defining your libraries initially. So these are things such as spaces, our architectural elements, etc. So we can have a look here. You can see as well, I'd start off with the building tab and then move over to the thermal loads. Now, this sort of methodology is present in all our solutions, all our programs. So it's not sort of moving from one program to another eventually becomes inherent with the workflow, because it's a very similar sort of progression through a typical project. And I'm going to try to demonstrate that in a bit. So of course we have our spaces. We would initially, of course, just like any other definition of spaces, we'd classify the space, of course, occupied, unoccupied, define our calculation conditions, heating, cooling, ventilation, as well. We can attribute certain schedules as well to that particular space. We can, of course, define some internal heat gains, etc., etc. And this is what we're expected to do for all our spaces. Now, of course, we have the nice feature that I like here is that we can actually export this particular specification of the office building, and at a later date, when we're dealing with another project, we don't have to go through it again and start basically mimicking our previous projects. So of course, to increase design time, we can basically just import our particular specification for our offices if we have them exported, and then make the relevant changes that we need. Of course, every project is different, etc., etc. So once that's done, you can see here all my spaces are defined in this project. I haven't started a new project because this takes some time and we don't have too much time for this. So I'm just going through some examples and demonstrating what we would do. Then we move on to our architectural elements. So you can see here our architectural elements. So I've got my facades here, and you can see the two types of brick walls. Now the 3D model will highlight those different types of brick walls here. So I'm able to see which elements I'm amending, of course. So the 3D viewer actually does a great job in helping out the designer here. And you can see here, if I come into my brick wall, I'm expected to achieve the highest degree of accuracy with our peak heating and cooling loads to insert a detailed input of that particular facade. Now, of course, we have options for simplified inputs, so where we're just able to give the thickness, thermal resistance, etc. But also to increase, again, efficiency and effectiveness, we would use our detailed input. Now, another thing here as well, now this program is modeled with the ASHRAE engine. So we've actually taken from the handbook all the different, well, for instance here, the different wall types. So these are straight from the standard, and you can use them for your reference here as well. And you can see here all the different the representative wall types, and of course our U values that can be viewed here as well. So again, you can see here my brick wall, my brick facade has been defined here. I'm also able to insert linear thermal bridges within the facade, and also punctual thermal bridges as well. Of course, another thing, if you guys haven't realized, I can of course export and import all these specifications, so I don't have to go back every single time and conduct the same thing over and over again. We can, upon using the programs through time, you develop a library of materials that you're able to use at later dates, etc., etc. And you can see here, we get a little diagram, a little diagram of our brick wall, and also the layers. And again, these two important coefficients. So my heat transfer coefficient and my thermal capacity all here. And this also will be taken to the model. Then moving on again, partitions, underground walls, slabs, etc. You can see here just by viewing all our different glazed openings, skylights, linear thermal bridges as well. And this is another thing that we need to point out here. Our linear thermal bridges, we have edge processing as well within the program. So you're not expected to define every single linear thermal bridge and define the PSI values for each. We literally come over here to our edge processing, select that, configure our processes, and we have, of course, in our repertoire, multiple codes that we're able to define as well. We can do things such as numerical analysis, etc., etc. And then we can basically run the linear thermal bridges. And of course, the program will recognize similar linear thermal bridges and give us updated results. So you can see here, the edges generated was 846, 239 of them were useful, and 91 were recovered. So I can accept that, and you can see all my edges have been imported. Again, as well, by going into this project tab. So once that's done in the library, we'd head to our projects tab and view basically what is like a sort of composition of those particular floor spaces. So you can see here my dining room, my hall, my office, my toilet, and of course I can define them. I can view them by particular spaces that I've defined prior here as well. So quite a nifty feature here when trying to analyze the certain occupational behavior of those spaces. Then, I don't want to spend too much time here. We move on to thermal loads. Now, what happens here is the specifications we've inserted in our building tab get sent to the ASHRAE engine. Prior to starting the analysis, we would of course define our location here. Now, of course, you can see by region, country, station name, of course, and of course, all those specifications and details about that particular location get updated, and we can accept those changes. Of course, we also have some different calculation methods. I always like to stick with ASHRAE. Of course, we have the EN code as well, safety factors, etc. We can accept. And then also another thing that I wanted to mention is that we can create different hypotheses within the program. So we can look at multiple different scenarios in which our building is able to behave within. I'm just going to keep this scenario here. I can update the results. And you can see here now, I get my detailed reports on that particular space. So again, all these reports can be shared, exported, and printed through here. And you can see here all the different formats that we're able to export and share with. So again, here, zone cooling loads by particular zone. So our dining room, offices, and corridors, and you can see the level of detail that gets generated here. So heating, cooling, all our different cooling load progression graphs, load summaries, etc., throughout the day as well. Now, what we can do now. So of course, once we've configured our energy, our Cyclone loads model, by clicking this update button and updating the project, those particular specifications and reports get associated with our project. So when we move on to other programs within the workflow, our important data, so our peak heating and peak cooling loads, get transferred over as well. So we're able to, I'm going to show in just a minute, intelligently and accurately attribute certain air conditioning models to certain spaces because we know those values to a high degree. Now, of course, we can look at results from particular spaces as well. You can see here, this is my cooling load for a particular month. I can define those, and you can see all the different analysis results that I'm able to view here as well. So annual peak cooling load, overall calculations, RTF solar throughout, etc. So the functionality is there, and I can also view ventilation and infiltration diagrams here as well for my analysis, of course. Now, we can move on. So again, once we've got those two values, and sorry, not just the two values, but once we've got our analysis results, we can move on to a program called Open BIM Toshiba. So again, as I mentioned prior, this is a program that's been developed through the collaboration of the BIM Service Center and Toshiba and their HVAC sector. You can see here upon entering the program, the overall feel of the programs are quite similar. So again, we have our 3D model here, we have our floor selections here as well, and of course our general settings and BIM models are always on the top left hand and the BIM server connection on the top right. Now this is a program that this is a design that's been again, sorry, it's an example. You can see here the air conditioning system has been installed, our VRF, that's present on the top, again with multi-split systems and VRFs within the floors as well. So how we would expect to define this, work through the program. Before, what I wanted to touch on was, of course, our the certain general settings that you'd have to specify before. So again, these certain calculation options that we can define prior, again, modeled off Toshiba's workflow. Again, going into the BIM model, we can see all the different elements that are present in the model, and I'm able to view and select by particular elements. Our climate data as well, we can of course look at setting our climate data as well before. So again, certain things such as all our summer and winter dry bulb temperatures and relevant humidity in the air. And then of course, what is the most powerful thing about our Open BIM Toshiba programs, all our manufacturing Open BIM systems, is that it goes into high detail about the certain the categories and the catalogs of materials and systems that we have here. So you can see upon selecting a outdoor VRF unit, for instance, I'm able to select from certain catalogs, different types of equipment settings, and of course the vast repertoire of different specifications, of course. Now, of course, we can change these design options if we want, but these are all from the standard. And you can see here the checks as well. And this is what's quite nifty about these certain this sort of methodology here. I can also have a look at a nice 3D view of that particular type of equipment here. Let's have a look. I'm going to come over here to this particular VRF unit. That's an indoor unit. You can see here the checks that have been defined. Now, I'm able to come over here to consult checks, and upon selecting that particular VRF unit, I get a report on the checks that have been defined and attributed to that particular VRF unit. So total cooling capacity, sensible cooling capacity, and heating cooling capacity. And you can see as well our required heating capacity, our sensible cooling capacity, and required cooling capacity that have been taken from our CYPEHVAC loads program. So again, you can see here that I'm able to design quite intelligently, depending on my my freedom as well. So you can see here I'm able. So upon selecting a weaker unit, I get automatically a question mark. I can consult the checks, and you can see here I'm deficient in my sensible cooling capacity by 4 watts. Now, not only can we intelligently select certain models, but we can design our installations. Now, upon selecting design, we get our pipe diameters, our pipe lengths, all within the program and defined internally here. And you can see as well, I'm able to view those and view the checks for those particular particular elements as well. So quite nifty in this certain workflow here. And you can see as well all my installations within the 3D model. Now, of course, you can see here the BIM model that's been imported, of course, and also the different files that are associated with that BIM model. So you can see I can turn on and off my carpentry selection. So my windows and doors, I can turn off those views. If I wanted to, I can turn off basically everything and just see my my HVAC installation as such. Now, what I wanted to go through was, of course, our reports and schematic diagrams. So we can have a look at our schematic diagrams that we're able to generate here. So again, our outdoor unit heat pump and VRF unit here. And we get our schematic diagrams as well. Also able to be shared, etc., with our project team members. Then, of course, we have our reports. So two types of reports here, our VRF report that we're able to view. So again, project compliance, all the different types of checks. These can again be exported, shared, etc. Also schematic diagrams that are present as well within the program. And also our materials list. So you'll be able to see here the different materials that have been employed within the project. And you can see as well quite easily to the functionality to be quite inheritive, so that we can just basically send this to our suppliers and they know exactly what we need, and it's quite easy to do so. Again, I want to stress this sort of functionality with the sharing and exporting functions here. And that's a little bit about our Open BIM Toshiba software. So this is for a detailed selection of air conditioning systems that we would like to adopt in our workflow. And this is, of course, another thing that is quite powerful about the software is we can make so we can look at different Open BIM systems such as Toshiba, all our different other ones as well, and create the sort of best fit model for our particular spaces as well.
Drawings.
Now, of course, as well, we can view our drawings. So I'm able to select the different types of drawings here. So my floor plans and also schematic drawings. I can have a look at my first two floors. And you can see here the drawings can be generated and edited within our drawing composition selector. Again, we can export to DWG as formats as well for later use with our design softwares, etc. These drawings, again, I want to mention, they can all be edited, etc. So it's not this particular setting always. So that's a little bit about our Open BIM Toshiba software. We're going to move on because I want to get through the sort of the other certain programs we have. We're moving on to our CYPEHVAC program. Now, this program deals with a vast repertoire of HVAC solutions. So basically everything. So our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning models. And you can see as well, what I want to stress is that the environment is quite similar across the board. So again, our 3D model here, our floor selections, our general settings as well that we'd start off with. And you can see here the same project, but that's been defined with our CYPEHVAC model program. So again, we define those general settings. These general settings look at, of course, drawings for, reference drawing plans, location data, external conditions, etc., report designs, and of course, our libraries. So all our different spaces, you might remember, all our different spaces have been transferred here, and that interoperability within the programs is evident here as well. So our cooling temperatures and heating temperatures that have been defined prior, etc., etc. Not only do our spaces, but also the different equipment types. So radiant floor heating selections, grills, radiators, supply diffusers, all our different tower radiators, they can all be selected here. Now, of course, once you see this blue button, it means that the program already has some, for instance, supply diffusers that you can select. So I can come over here and you can see here the different types of supply diffusers along with their reference specifications. But of course, if I wanted to, I can create my own one as such. So moving on, we can of course change, we can of course look at different space combinations as well within this program. So it's not, so what I'm trying to stress is that the certain changes that we make within one program are not necessarily locked. So we can of course make certain changes that you would in another program, all within the program that you're using at that present time. So of course, within HVAC solutions, we have our radiant floor heating. So again, the ability to generate all our different types of radiant floor heatings. And of course, we can automatically generate these to particular spaces as well, quite easily. Thermal emitters, our duct settings as well. And also our VRF systems. Now you can see here, this program has taken some VRFs from the Toshiba software, but again, that's just as a certain certain generic model that we've inserted here. And of course, our horizontal vertical pipes for those installations. And you can see as well, upon those checks being done, I'm able to go into particular results and update them as well. Now, upon updating those results, we get those checks, and then I can intelligently design my ventilation, etc., pipes, and so the program actually aids me in doing that. Let's have a look at maybe defining a exhaust system. So we can come over here. We can insert a straight duct. We can define the height above the floor, the particular material as well. I can go into other materials that we have. You can see here, but of course you can define them as well. Define new materials, the type of section, width, length, flow as well. So I can come over here to exhaust and define that. What I can also do is, for instance, lock particular specifications so that when I go to intelligently design my, let's say, my straight duct, the system will not touch the specification that I've locked. So you can see why these sort of things are important when we're looking at catalogs that you have within your repertoire, within your workflow as well. I can also consult the checks for that particular straight duct. And you can see here, I get a report on that particular straight duct check. Now let's continue on. Let's create a exhaust vent from our bathrooms here. So we can come over here, basically by just clicking on the, left clicking every single time I reach a vertice, I'm able to select a configuration. I can come over here. Upon inserting that, I can create a straight vertical duct, and I'm able to define again. So my straight duct, height above the initial floor, and then again, we'll go up to my roof. Again, those specifications as well, and I can accept that change. Again, defining that as exhaust, and you can see now I'm able to select the end of that duct. Now again, we would want to create a grill here for our exhaust by selecting exhaust. Now you can see here the check that's been defined. So this particular exhaust duct this particular exhaust grill that I've defined has not met the flow requirements even before designing. So I can of course increase my I can of course change my flow specification here. So for instance, you can see the minimum is 341. I can define it as 350. And upon selecting that, you can see the check has been defined. And you can see here now that exhaust has been defined. Now, of course, it's quite a large duct because I'm taking this particular duct up 5 floors. So you can see as well, if I come over here to my roof, that my duct actually exists on the roof as well. I can, of course, refresh my 3D model, and I'm able to see my exhaust duct here. Now, upon selecting design, you can see here that I get a particular error saying that the duct is not connected to the distribution network. So what I would need to do now is connect it to the distribution network, and that would be by, you can see here that I don't actually have this sort of error here. So coming over here to the duct, I can select my straight duct here, and I can change I can basically delete this one, which I have defined here. Duct.
Straight. Okay.
And you can see now that vertical duct has been designed. And upon selecting now,
Should be fine.
so I think we've actually made a mistake with that installation. I'm not actually too sure how we would define it. I had done it previously, but let's move on. We've got some. Do you have the supply diffuser? Yeah, of course it should work. Okay, that's fine. We can go through now. Let's look at a question. To William asked, is it possible for this tool to automatically check for collisions and interference during the design phase? Now, to I think you were here for the presentation last week where we went through our Open BIM model checker. So that Open BIM model checker, what that functionality does is that we look for certain clashes between models, and upon using our Open BIM model checker, we can find those clashes and consult those checks within that program as well. So again, how we sort of work is, because when we come over here and we view those, we view our different models, we can of course try to avoid these collisions. But again, those collisions can never really be avoided completely. We would look at our Open BIM model checker. There's a program in our repertoire that deals specifically with that particular question there, with that particular issue. Daniel asked, maybe is needed something to create the airflow kind of a fan. Now, there's no fans that have been there are no fans within this software here. For our fan specifications, we have programs such as EasyDuct, EasyVMC, and our Open BIM systems that are able to define those particular fans within our installation. But here we just have we're able to define grills and supply diffusers as such. Okay, perfect. Now, okay, perfect. Now let's move on. You can see here that we've had a look at our certain workflow that we like to use. You can see here my return exhaust, my supply exhaust, and our exhaust installation. We could of course view these in 3D, make those intelligent designs, and also conduct our reports as well. So we can of course produce these reports. And quite easily we're able to achieve and obtain these project reports. Again, not only for our VRF systems, but for our ducts. So all our duct distributions. And materials list as well. By particular element. Now, of course, not only do we generate reports, but again, the drawings as well. So you can see the functionality here between multiple different programs, and we're able to view those here as well. And you can see here, my installations are easily drawn within the program as well. And of course, I can define and edit those quite nicely here. So that's for our design of HVAC installations. So you can see the sort of functionality here. We work through a program such as CYPEHVAC loads to define our building. So to define the behavioral characteristics of our building, those values that I said. And then we have a sort of wide range of options as to how to progress through the HVAC workflow. So there isn't one particular best way to do it. It's depending on your particular workflow, how you like to work, whether you would adopt certain manufacturer settings that you would like, that also provide a certain high degree of detail and specification. Or you can see here with our CYPEHVAC HVAC, we can of course design and get a good feel for our HVAC installation within the program as well. Now, let's have a look. What did I want to do here? Now, of course, we can have a look at our different fittings and details for particular sections within our ventilation. So you can see if I consult my checks, this particular fitting has this particular elbow. I'm able to generate these reports for that particular section here as well. And you can see here the report for my straight duct as well. So you can see the reference that's been associated and also the calculations that have been taken into consideration. Again, of course, with our VRF systems. Okay, so that's a little bit about our CYPEHVAC HVAC solution. Now let's move on. Benjamin asks, does Open BIM also use CIBSC standards that we use in Ireland? Unfortunately, at this date, we don't support CIBSE standards, but of course the ASHRAE standard is quite universal in terms of setting the standard for our energy and HVAC solutions. Peter asks, which climate data files could be used for certain places like Bulgaria? What format of the climate data files are compatible for SYPE software? We can go to here, CYPEHVAC loads, to our thing, and you can see here if we come to Europe, Bulgaria, and you can see a wide range of cities that have been modeled from the ASHRAE handbook here. So I hope, Peter, that answers your question. So all your different locations are specified here. And of course, by importing those locations, those particular values change. So again, there's no need to. Of course, you can also import your climate files, but again, there's no really a need to do that because all your specifications are here, and you can also customize everything within the program as well, and generate libraries as well. So you can, of course, export these particular weather specifications and bring them in at a later date. So I hope, Peter, that answers your question. Let's move on. So that's basically our HVAC solution here. So what we would do now is, of course, we move into our energy analysis section of our presentation today. And so our energy analysis presentation here is centered around the program CYPEHVAC E+. So CYPEHVAC E+ is for the generation of our building energy envelopes and basically our raw energy files, our EDF files that we're able to generate here. Now let's have a look the certain specifications that we would design. Now what I want to mention prior is how do we connect our HVAC installations with our energy? Well, you can see here, if I come over here, you can see I've imported the same project. The program automatically understands that I have air conditioning systems within the project. So within the project, you can see all my different hot water hydronic and chilled water hydronics, and also my HRV installation. And I'm able to, again, make specifications there and detail those types of equipment, not only in our HVAC installation, but also in our E+ installation. So how we would progress through this workflow, you can see all the specifications are defined here. So the program will take into consideration the impact our systems have on our energy model. So again, you can see here general data. It's very straightforward. The sort of workflow that we have, all our different general data settings that we expected to find prior, of course. Location data, again, we can change that location data. Again, Peter, you can, of course, bring in those location data in EPW format. Again, if you wanted to update those that location particularly. And you can see here the different graphs that are imported within the program here. Then again, we would, just like CYPEHVAC loads, our specifications for our building. You can see here they all get brought in with our workflow, and again our zones and domestic hot water systems that we may have defined prior. So again, our hydronics software that we're not going to be going through today, but again for the installation of water cooling and water heating systems, they are all interoperable with each other within the program as well. So again, those linear thermal bridges, and you can see all the same specifications that have been brought in. You can remember that particular brick wall that we defined prior. Now, upon that, you can see here I can also define air conditioning systems within this program, but not to a high degree. It's just I can of course define the specifications of that particular air conditioning system, but I'm not able to intelligently design within this program. It's handled within our HVAC and our Open BIM systems. Now, once we've defined this, we can go into floor plans and get a 2D view of our project. And upon here, I'm able to define and change certain spaces, lighting specifications, fenestration details for our windows, etc., etc. Look at our vertices for those particular sections, make amendments to those as well, and the list goes on. Floor slabs that we're able to change as well. We can also view the condensation analysis results for the particular section as well. Upon completion of our design in E+, we move on to analysis. And so this is where the the fun starts, basically. We have the option to generate our E+ files and results files within the program as well. And we're going to have a look now and analyze this project in particular. Now, while this project is analyzing, I'm going to show a demonstration. This might take just a few minutes. This demonstration that I have here basically demonstrates the further functionality that we can employ with our workflow. So this is our FDS viewer, but of course you can see here our ventilation and air conditioning systems, both ground level and top floor level, and we're able to model the behavior of ventilation, and we can see some other variables within the program as well. So I can come over here to load particular slice files, such as pressure, temperature, velocity, and I'm able to view that particular specification as well. And you can see here, this is a simulation of particular pressures along a particular slice that I've defined prior. And you can see the simulation of temperature with our ventilation systems as well. So we're able to not only intelligently design those particular systems upon our spaces, but we can of course look at analytical representations of our installations. Of course, velocity as well. And so you can see we can basically model our installations. Now, of course, these are just in two particular slices that I've selected, and I can view those as well and view the distribution within the spaces that I've defined prior. As such, so you can see here all the different slices that I'm able to generate. So pressure, temperature, velocity. We can even look at visibility, etc. When we're looking at when we go further into our fire solutions, etc. So this sort of feature appeals to certain professionals that like to visualize the effect that their ventilation and their air conditioning models have on particular spaces, and we can do that here as well. Now let's go back, and you can see here upon completion of the results, Daniel asks, just before we continue, Daniel asks, is the data imported from the CYPEHVAC load program or from the HVAC one, or the specifications have to be redefined again? So we share and import in CYPEHVAC E+, and we can consult those elements from CYPEHVAC loads as well. So our HVAC equipment is from, or we bring in those HVAC equipment specifications from our Open BIM solutions. So there's two basic methodologies that I've touched on here, Daniel. So again, I mentioned prior, it's up to the user to particularly select the way in which he wants to progress through the workflow. And again, of course, it comes down to whether you want to employ certain Open BIM systems, whether things such as detailed analysis of ventilation, etc., appeals to that particular project. So I hope that answered your question. If not, we can address that after the presentation. Now, of course, upon analysis of our building, you can see here I'm able to generate the certain reports and specifications on the peak heating and cooling energy of our installation. So you can see here by particular zone, I get a detailed analysis and results section of my heating demand, my cooling demand, energy losses throughout contributing to ventilation, etc., etc. I can have a look at my demand report here. So this is my energy demand report. So by month and by particular specifications within, so lighting, occupancy, infiltration, etc. I'm able to view those in a graph format, which is quite nice here. So monthly heating and cooling energy demands, and then again, energy demand by particular space. So here we can, of course, view the results and behavior of particular spaces individually. And then, of course, those numerical analysis by zone. So that was our demand report. We'd move on to our consumption report. And you can see here our consumption report gets generated. Now, of course, for those of you that need E+ files, those Energy Plus files are able to be downloaded here just by a click of a button, so that you're able to download, export these files in any format quite nicely here. So again, we can, of course, view those complementary reports as well. So things such as description of materials used, linear thermal bridge reports, condensation reports, and internal comfort reports as well. So how I'm going to end it here is that I hope I've demonstrated the certain workflow that one is able to employ within our HVAC and energy solutions. Now, of course, I haven't gone through the vast programs that we also have within the repertoire, considering specifications and also time as well that we didn't have. But of course, we do have specialized applications that deal with particular aspects and particular elements of our energy and HVAC installation. And of course, I would highly recommend you guys to have a look at our Open BIM, our BIM Service Center store, and go through the different HVAC and energy analysis programs that we have for download here. Now, of course, we went through 4 programs here, but of course we were stressed for time, and we didn't. Well, it's very difficult to go through each particular program that we have. Of course, we have programs for ducting, schematic diagram editing, etc. So the list goes on. But I hope you guys have. I hope I've demonstrated the workflow quite well. Again, I hope I also demonstrated the interoperability within our programs. So it's not like it's quite it's quite easy to move from program to program, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, your work and your efforts in one program also get recognized by the other, and we get that interoperability and that Open BIM workflow benefits coming through as well. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the workflow. I'm going to be taking questions now. Now, if you guys want to stick around for the questions, you can. But if not, have a great day. And again, if you guys have any questions now, please submit those now, and I'll do my best to answer those accordingly. Karthikeyan, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Apologies if I didn't. How to download the software. I went through that at the start, but you may have missed it. bimserver.center. You need to go to bimserver.center. bimserver.center here. I come over here. You want to go to the top right here, the login section, and you want to register as a user. You put your name, your email, your password. You will get a confirmation email, confirm your account, then come back to this exact website, insert your account details, come over here to store after, and of course, you can see our HVAC installations and the programs that I've used are all here. Karthikeyan, I hope that's answered your question. Sorry again if I've pronounced your name correctly. Sorry about that. Would I recommend Toshiba or Daikin for an office building? Now, this is a very abstract question. I mean, I can't actually specify which one I would. But I would recommend, and I did mention this before, is that with our ability within our workflow to compare those particular installations. So if you go into our Open BIM Toshiba and you model a particular installation, and then you move on to Open BIM Daikin, with our CYPEHVAC improvements that I'm actually viewing here, you can compare two models. So you can compare two different situations, two different installations, and view the different changes. So things such as energy cost, net value, so those prices that are inserted, budgets, associated expenses, and you can see here as well. So it's not really a thing whether I recommend Toshiba or Daikin. To be honest, I don't know. But you as a user are able to, again, model your specifications in multiple different brands, and then you have the option, you have the freedom to choose the most efficient one, and that's basically what the workflow is about. Okay, next question. I hope that answered your question, to Chewy. Okay, we had another question from, let me just quickly have a look. From Benjamin Ross, some applications have a price 0 to a certain amount. What does that mean? Okay, so in terms of adoption of our solutions, we have own particular packages that we associate with particular models. So, for instance, you can see here the 0 to certain amount. That's for buying one particular software that you would have to pay that specific amount. But of course, upon consultation with our sales department, we can of course offer package solutions. So our HVAC our HVAC solution would feature programs that we've been through today. So our HVAC, our CYPEHVAC loads. But what we try and do, and you can see the programs here that are free, we try and get people to, of course, use our software and be. So you can see here our CYPEHVAC loads is for free for download. But that's basically the certain first step that you would need to adopt in our program as well. But again, upon talking to our sales department, we're able to offer package solutions to you. And I hope that has answered your question. Okay, let's move on. Next question comes from Peter. He asks, which renewable energy systems could be simulated by CYPE software? For instance, geothermal, heat pump, PV. Okay, perfect. So those are all taken into consideration. You can see I've moved here to I've gone back to CYPEHVAC E+, and I'm able to define our geometric heat pump here. Now, of course, we have that geothermal heat pump from Valiant. I'm able to select different types and select from certain models within the catalog. Now, of course, we also have our Open BIM Systems Valiant, where we're able to select, like for instance, you've specified the geothermal heat pump to a greater degree as well. But of course, we have it within our software. PV photovoltaic panels. Now, of course, and with those PV photovoltaic panels and also our other elements, you can, of course, introduce those energy consumed values. So here you can see final electricity generated by auto consumed. We can, of course, define that particular value in kilowatt hours. Not only are we able to do that, again, with your question regarding PV photovoltaic panels, we also have our PV systems, so our CYPEHVAC PV systems, and we're able to create PV photovoltaic panels within the software as well. So I hope that's answered your question. Again, as well, we have for our plumbing installation for those solar systems, our site plumbing solar systems application as well for domestic hot water and solar connections here as well. Brian asks, where do you assign the thermal load and material specification for the space, facades, etc. in CYPEHVAC load software or an integrated architectural software IFC model? In CYPEHVAC load software, which is the straight answer to your question. So up here, you can see here all my facades. I'm able to, which I went through in the presentation, define the specifications for those particular spaces and also specifications for my elements. So in terms of bringing in those integrated architectural softwares, what we basically define is just the existence of that particular facade. So in terms of editing those facades, that is all done within CYPEHVAC loads. And you can see here all the different manufacturers and codes that we've inserted and made a part of our program. So all our different masonries, etc., etc. Of course, all the materials from different codes, etc., that we're able to view and define within CYPEHVAC loads. So I hope that's answered your question, Brian. Okay. Next question comes from Tachui. Is there a cost reduction if we purchase a complete package solution? This is something that you need to talk with our sales department about. Of course, we can facilitate and we can come to an agreement on particular packages that you'd like to create and have. Of course, I'll reference and I'll send you a contact for that after the program. Brendan asks, is it possible to access the webinar? Yes, of course. If you guys want the webinar, of course, this will be available for download if you guys want it. And Benjamin, I'll send that to you. Benjamin, I'll send that to you after. Peter asks, does SYPE software provide CO2 emissions analysis? No, not at the moment, but it's of course something we're looking at employing within the next update, definitely, Peter. Okay, perfect. I think that's it for today, guys. I hope I have adequately answered your questions. Of course, if you have further questions later on, of course I will. Don't be afraid to don't be afraid to ask us within the program. All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks for attending the webinar. And I hope you guys actually get onto BIM Service Center and try out our solution. All right, guys, see you later. Bye.